This book is not about silence. It is about power. It's not the kind of power that seeks attention, but the quiet kind. The kind that builds slowly inside you without anyone noticing, until one day it is unshakable. We live in a world where everything is loud. Opinions are loud. Emotions are loud. Pain is loud. And in the middle of all that noise, we are told to speak louder, to fight back, to always react. But what if the greatest strength isn't in reacting, but in choosing not to? Asterisk, you were never taught that the pause between stimulus and response is where real transformation lives. You were never told that silence in the right moment can speak louder than 1,000 angry words. This book is not about pretending things. Don't hurt or ignoring injustice. It is about reclaiming your energy. It is about understanding when to speak and when to stay silent. It is about choosing your peace over someone else's chaos. Asterisk. There is nothing passive about stillness. There is nothing weak about not responding. In fact, it takes far more strength to sit in your emotions, breathe through them, and let them pass, than it does to lash out and regret it later. The people who master their inner world don't need to control the outer world. They don't need to win arguments or prove their worth. Their presence speaks for itself. Their silence is not absence, it is depth. Asterisk. This is a guide for the one who is tired of giving their energy to things that don't deserve it, for the one who is ready to stop being triggered by everything around them, for the one who is ready to be free. In the pages ahead, you'll learn how to break the cycle of reaction, how to pause, how to reflect, how to regain control of your own story, and most importantly, how to live in a way where peace is your default, not something you're constantly chasing. Asterisk. You will not get there overnight. You will not always get it right. But with practice, with presence, and with patience, you'll begin to feel something shift inside you, a calmness, a power that no one else can touch because it was never theirs to take. It has always been yours. And now, it's time to return to it. Chapter 1. There is a kind of power that doesn't announce itself, doesn't raise its voice, it doesn't prove a point, and it never begs to be seen. This power simply exists, silent, deep, and untouchable. It lives in people who've mastered the art of not reacting, in a world that constantly demands your energy, your anger, your defense. Not reacting is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's not weakness. It's not surrender. It's mastery over your impulses, your emotions, your ego. Asterisk, we are surrounded by situations that test our calm. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A coworker takes credit for your work, a friend says. Something insensitive. A family member pushes your buttons like they always do. The world gives you 1,000 reasons a day to lose your temper, to argue, to defend, and most people do. They react, immediately, emotionally, unconsciously, because reacting is easy. It's automatic. It feels justified. This gives a short-lived sense of control. But what if the true control comes in doing the opposite? Asterisk, not reacting doesn't mean you didn't feel anything. It means you felt everything, and still chose silence. You still chose peace. You still chose clarity. It's easy to scream when you're hurt, but it takes strength to sit with that hurt, understand it, and let it pass without spreading it to others. Most people think silence means you lost, but in truth, silence often means you've already won, because you didn't allow someone else to pull you into their storm. You stayed in your center. You remained the calm in the chaos. Asterisk's reaction is the language of the ego. It says, I must prove something. I must fight back. I must be heard. But the soul doesn't care about being right. It cares about being at peace. The soul whispers, let it go. You don't need to respond. You don't need to fight every battle. That whisper gets louder the more you listen. The stronger your inner world becomes, the less noise the outer world makes. You begin to see that not every insult needs a reply. Not every disrespect needs a reaction. And not every opinion needs to matter. Asterisk, you start to observe instead of absorb. You see people for who they are, many of them reacting from their own pain, their own trauma, their own need to be seen. And you've stopped taking it personally. You've stopped letting other people's wounds shape your behavior. You stop matching energy. You realize that protecting your peace is not selfish. It's necessary. Because your energy is your life. And every reaction costs you a piece of it. Asterisk, you can't stop people from being loud, cruel, or judgmental. But you can stop giving them the power to disturb your inner world. Can stop letting their actions dictate your peace. You can choose every single day to take a breath instead of a bite, to hold your silence instead of throw your words, to walk away instead of step into war. Asterisk, there's something powerful about a person who doesn't flinch, who doesn't explain, who doesn't chase chaos, who sits still when everything around them is moving fast. That person has strength others can't understand. That person becomes unshakable. And when you reach that place, life feels different. The noise fades. The urgency fades. You don't rush. You don't chase. You don't beg. You simply exist in your own rhythm, in your own clarity, untouched by drama. Asterisk, this isn't about shutting down. It's not about being numb or cold. It's about being aware of what deserves your energy, and what doesn't. It's about realizing that most people aren't trying to hurt you. They're just hurting. It's about choosing peace. Not because you're afraid of conflict, but because you know what conflict costs. Asterisk, it's a journey. You won't always get it right. Sometimes you'll snap. Sometimes you'll react. And that's okay. Growth isn't about being perfect, it's about becoming more conscious. It's about catching yourself a little sooner each time. About learning the pause, practicing the stillness, honoring the silence. Asterisk, because the truth is, not reacting doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to protect your peace. It means you've learned that silence isn't empty. It's full of strength, of clarity, of calm, and in that calm, you become unstoppable. Chapter 2, there comes a point in your journey where you stop asking, how do I fix everything around me? Start asking, how do I stay rooted in myself while the world moves? This shift is subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but it changes everything. Because the truth is, most of your suffering hasn't come from what's happened. It's come from how you've responded. The anxiety, the anger, the emotional exhaustion, they were never just about the event. They were about how deeply you absorbed it, how quickly you reacted, how completely you gave it permission to invade your peace. We've been conditioned to think power looks like movement, like doing, like speaking. But real power often looks like stillness. It looks like choosing not to explain yourself when you're misunderstood. It looks like walking away from something that once made you feel seen, simply because it no longer feels peaceful. It looks like saying nothing when you could say everything because you've learned that not all truth needs to be spoken to be real. Not all battles are worth the wound. The further you walk this path, the more you start to see how much of your life was spent trying to control the uncontrollable. You tried to make people understand you. Tried to fix situations that weren't yours to fix. You tried to manage the energy in rooms that were never safe to begin with. In the process, you lost sight of your own center. You became a reaction, not a response. You became someone constantly pulled by the outside world, instead of rooted in your inner one. But then something happened. A shift. A quiet voice inside you. Not loud, not urgent, just steady, began asking, what if I just let go? Not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of no longer gripping so tightly to what isn't yours to carry. What if you allowed things to be what they are, instead of constantly trying to make them what you think they should be? What if peace wasn't something you had to chase, but something you could return to any time, in any moment, by choosing stillness over struggle? That's where the real practice begins. In those moments when someone says something cruel and you don't respond, not because you didn't hear it, but because you did and realized it wasn't about you. In those moments when the world feels loud and chaotic, and instead of joining the noise, you sit quietly with your breath, your awareness, your presence. In those moments when you feel misunderstood, and instead of defending, you trust that your truth doesn't need an audience to exist. You stop needing to be seen, and instead, you see yourself. There is immense power in that, kind of quiet resilience that no one can take from you, because it wasn't built from validation or applause. It was built in the hours you spent alone with yourself, the tears you cried without telling anyone, in the storms you survived without shouting, the ways you've healed quietly. That kind of strength isn't visible to the world, but it's felt. It's the kind of presence that changes the energy of a room without a single word. It's the kind of groundedness that turns chaos into silence simply by not reacting to it. And the more you cultivate that energy, the more you'll see how much power you've always had, not in controlling what happens, but in controlling how you carry it. That's the shift, from reaction to response, from impulse to intention, from external control to internal mastery. You begin to respond not from pain, but from clarity. You begin to choose your peace, not because you're numb, but because you're finally awake. You start to notice your own triggers, not to shame yourself, but to understand yourself. Why did that comment sting so much? Why did that person's behavior feel personal? Why did your body react the way it did? These aren't signs of weakness. They are doors. Outdoors into deeper self-awareness. Doors into healing. Because the more you understand your own emotional responses, the less you become controlled by them. Stop reacting to every poke, every jab, every wound. Not because you're disconnected, but because you're finally connected to yourself. It's not easy. This path will test you. There will be days where everything in you wants to fight back. Days where your silence feels like defeat. Days where you question if your peace is worth the price of being misunderstood. But in those moments, remember, peace is not passive. Peace is active. Peace is a choice you make again and again, even when everything in you wants to do the opposite. Peace says, I know who I am. I know what I value. And I'm no longer willing to abandon that just to win a fight I never needed to be in. You begin to see conflict differently, not as something to avoid, but as something you no longer fear. You realize that not everything that challenges you is worth your energy. Some battles are invitations to grow, to pause, to rise. Others are distractions designed to pull you out of alignment. The more grounded you become, the easier it is to tell the difference. And slowly, your life begins to change. On the outside, necessarily, but on the inside, the storms still come. But they don't shake you the way they used to. The noise still exists, but it doesn't echo in your mind. You move through life with more intention, more clarity, more grace. You stop rushing. You stop chasing. You stop begging for things that once made you feel whole. Because you've remembered you were never broken. You were just distracted. Your peace was never gone. It was just buried under everything you thought you needed to protect yourself. And now, you're returning. It's not to who you used to be, but to who you were before the world told you to be something else. You're not becoming colder, but you're becoming clearer. You're not closing your heart. You're strengthening it. You're not giving up on connection. You're finally connecting with yourself, with truth, with peace. Because in the end, it's the most powerful thing you'll ever do is protect your energy. Not with walls, not with weapons, but with wisdom, with discernment, with silence, with the unwavering decision to no longer participate in anything that costs you your peace. That's not selfish. That's sacred. And once you taste that kind of peace, not the fragile kind that depends on everything going right, but the rooted kind that lives inside you no matter what's happening around you, you'll never go back. You'll stop explaining. You'll stop defending. You'll stop engaging, because you'll finally understand. Not everything deserves a piece of you. Not everyone gets access. Not every moment requires your presence. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to be silent. You are allowed to choose stillness over struggle, presence over performance, peace over pride. When you do, life becomes softer. Not easier, but softer. Because you are no longer resisting it. You are flowing with it, responding to it. It's moving from your center. Chapter 3. There is a moment, subtle and quiet, where something inside you stops rushing to be understood. It's not bitterness. It's not defeat. It's simply a release. A realization that your energy is too sacred to keep placing it in the hands of those who misuse it. You begin to see that validation is a fleeting comfort, and no amount of explanation will ever reach someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. So instead of explaining, you observe. Instead of defending, you detach. You let go, not of love, not of care, but of the need to be seen in a certain way. You free yourself. Asterisk, this is the evolution of your inner world. Where once you were caught in a cycle of proving, you now find peace in presence. Where once you chased closure, now you choose clarity. And that clarity doesn't always come from words. Sometimes it comes from silence. From sitting with what you cannot change and finding that it no longer has the power to change you. Asterisk, people will notice. They won't always know what changed, but they'll feel it. The way you no longer flinch. The way your eyes don't seek approval. The way your voice is calm, even in disagreement. It unsettles those who are used to getting a rise out of you. It confuses those who once fed on your reaction, because you no longer give away the most precious parts of yourself just to be heard, just to be right, just to be accepted. Asterisk, you realize that not all connection is healing. Some connection is distraction. Some is familiar chaos disguised as love. And as you grow quieter within, you begin to notice the subtle drain in places you once craved. It's the way your body tightens around certain people. The way your peace fades. In certain spaces, these are signs. Signs that your nervous system no longer feels safe, not because you're fragile, but because you're finally aware of what safety truly feels like, and you're unwilling to settle for less. Asterisk, there is grief in this awakening. A soft, aching grief for the version of you who tolerated so much just to feel loved, who kept showing up in rooms that made them shrink, who kept responding to pain as if it were a question. But with that grief comes liberation. Because now, you choose differently. Choose people who speak the same language of stillness, who don't need to be loud to be kind, who don't mistake your silence for distance, but recognize it as depth. Asterisk, you start to notice how rare true peace is.
Ow!
How loud the world has become. How many conversations are just reactions bouncing off each other. And instead of trying to be louder than the noise, you choose to be softer, slower. You learn to listen, not to reply, but to understand. Not to win, but to witness. And in that listening, you begin to hear things you never could before. The trembling behind the anger, the fear behind the control, the loneliness behind the cruelty. And suddenly, you don't take it personally anymore. Asterisk, this is compassion, not weakness. You're not excusing harmful behavior. You're just refusing to let it poison your peace. You're no longer triggered by someone's chaos because you see it for what it is. Theirs, not yours. You don't need to fix it. You don't need to carry it. You only need to decide if it has a place in your life, and if it doesn't, you let it go. Gently, without rage, without revenge. You just release, and that release becomes your freedom. This chapter of your life isn't about fighting. It's about returning to the version of you who didn't need to be everything for everyone, who didn't bend and break just to be chosen, who didn't water down their soul to be more palatable. You are not here to be understood. By all, you are here to be true to yourself. To walk with grace even when no one claps. To hold your power even when no one sees. To be so deeply rooted in your truth that no storm can uproot you. Asterisk, and storms will come. The world will still press your buttons. People will still cross lines. You'll still feel misunderstood, hurt, dismissed. But now you carry something different. A presence that doesn't flinch. A wisdom that doesn't rush. A power that doesn't need to perform. You'll pause not because you're unsure, but because you're certain. Certain that your peace is too precious to be tossed into the fire of every provocation. Asterisk, there's no need to prove you've changed. No need to convince others of your growth. The evidence is in your silence, in your restraint. In the calm way, you walk away from things that once made you unravel. This is the quiet victory. The kind no one sees, but everyone feels. And it's not for them, it's for you, for your nervous system, for your heart, for your future, asterisk, because every time you choose not to react, not to match energy, not to abandon your stillness. You reclaim a piece of yourself. You pull your energy back from the noise. You bring your power home. That is the most courageous thing you can do. To be soft in a hard world. To be silent in a loud one. To be grounded when everything is trying to shake you. Asterisk, and when you live this way long enough, it stops being something you practice. It becomes who you are. Chapter 4. The day you stop needing the world to mirror your peace is the day you finally begin to live freely. Until then, you are bound to opinions, to reactions, to chaos that was never yours. You keep waiting for the world to calm down before you can breathe easy, but that's not how this works. Peace doesn't wait for the world. Peace shows up in spite of it. It's not the absence of noise. It's the refusal to be moved by it. And this is what most people don't understand. You don't find peace by escaping life. You find it by staying centered while life moves around you. Asterisk at some point. You'll notice how exhausting it is to keep getting pulled into every conversation that challenges you. Every glance that disrespects you. Every moment that triggers your ego. You'll notice the weight. Not of the moment itself, but of how long you carry it. You play it back. You replay your words. You imagine what you could have said better. But all of it keeps you stuck in the past. All of it keeps you away from now, where peace lives. Asterisk. So you start practicing the art of release. It's not once, not perfectly, but daily. In small moments, in subtle ways. You let go of the need to reply to every message the second it arrives. You stop entering battles that don't align with your values. You walk away from people who invite drama instead of peace. You do it gently, quietly, without announcement. Because the work you're doing isn't about them. It's about you. It's about protecting the parts of yourself you used to give away so freely. Asterisk, you begin to understand that boundaries are not walls, they're doors, and you choose who walks through, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. You no longer see silence as a weapon or stillness as a retreat. You see them as anchors. The deeper you sit in them, the less likely you are to be knocked off balance. You stop reacting out of old wounds. You start responding from new awareness. That's growth. Not loud, not always visible, but powerful in a way that shifts your entire life. Asterisk, there will be people who misunderstand your quiet. They will say you've changed. They will wonder why you're so distant. But it's not distance, it's direction. You're no longer available for chaos. You're no longer giving front row seats to people who throw stones. You're no longer entertaining situations that cost you your center. And that confuses those who were used to having access to you without earning it. Asterisk, but you don't owe your energy to anyone. You don't owe your story to people who twist it. You don't owe your presence to rooms that don't respect it. What you owe is to yourself, to show up in ways that align with your healing, your peace, your truth. That's not selfish. It's sacred. Asterisk, you start recognizing your triggers. Not so you can hide from them, but so you can learn from them. You trace them back to old pain, old patterns, old stories you've outgrown. You realize how often your reactions weren't about the present moment, but echoes from the past. And once you see that, you gain power. Because what's seen can be healed. What's understood can be released. You stop being afraid of your emotions. You start honoring them, letting them speak, letting them move through you without owning you. Asterisk, there is a kind of confidence that comes from this inner clarity, not the kind that needs to be expressed. It's the kind that's felt. You walk into a room and don't need to dominate it. You speak softly and still get heard. You smile, not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer performing. You've shed the layers, the masks, the need to be everything. And what's left is something raw, something real, something unshakable. Asterisk, you begin to trust yourself again, to trust your silence, to trust your timing. To trust that not every path requires your footsteps. Not every argument requires your voice. Not every story requires your presence. You become selective not because you think you're better, but because you know you're worthy of peace. And not everything around you can hold that peace with the same care. Asterisk, so you protect it. Not with anger, but with grace. Not with force, but with boundaries. You protect it by saying no without guilt. By leaving when your soul feels unsettled. by choosing rest when the world demands hustle. You stop trying to keep up. You stop trying to catch up. You realize you are not behind. You're right where your healing is. Right where your growth is. Right where your peace can take root. Asterisk, and slowly, your life begins to reflect that. The people change. The conversations shift. The moments soften. Not because the world is different, but because you are. You see through the noise. You respond to the essence. You stop reacting to every flicker of darkness because you've learned how to hold your own light. Asterisk. Chapter 5, there is a quiet revolution that happens inside you when you finally stop trying to fix everyone else. When you realize it was never your job to carry someone else's healing, to absorb their pain, to shrink yourself, to make them comfortable. You thought your empathy made you strong, and it did, but only until it became a cage. Only until your compassion turned into self-abandonment. Only until your silence became suppression, not sovereignty. That's when you began to feel the weight, not of love, but of leaking energy into places that only drained you. So now you are unlearning. Unlearning the habit of saving others before saving yourself. Unlearning the lie that being soft means being silent when you're hurt. Unlearning the patterns that taught you your worth was measured by how much of yourself you could give away. And it's not easy. Because for so long, your peace depended on everyone else's comfort. You called it kindness. You called it patience. But what it really was fear. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being seen as cold. Fear of being alone. But now something is shifting. Deeper kind of power is waking up inside you. A kind that doesn't explain, doesn't beg, doesn't overextend. It's the kind that simply says, I am enough. I'm not here to carry what isn't mine. I am not available for emotional chaos disguised as connection. I am no longer interested in being the hero in someone else's storm. This is the chapter where you step back, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You stop showing up where there's no reciprocity. You stop pouring into cups that never fill yours. Stop breaking your own boundaries just to make someone stay, because you finally understand that people meant for you will not require you to bleed for the bond. Real love, real respect, doesn't ask you to betray yourself to keep it. You start noticing how peaceful life becomes when you no longer take things personally. When someone snaps and you see their stress, instead of creating a story about your worth. When someone leaves, and instead of questioning your value, you honor their exit as redirection. When people don't support you, and you stop trying to, convince them to believe in something they were never meant to hold. You realize how many battles you used to fight that were never yours, and suddenly space opens. Space in your mind, space in your heart, space in your day. You're no longer consumed by fixing or defending or explaining. You reclaim that energy and pour it inward, into your healing, to your joy, into your stillness, to becoming the person you were before the world taught you to survive on noise. Because survival is loud. It reacts, it defends, it explains, but peace is quiet. It observes, it allows, it trusts. And the more you choose peace, the more you stop attracting chaos. As your frequency changes, your standards rise. You no longer entertain what doesn't align with your clarity, not out of pride, but out of protection, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. You begin to move differently. You pause more often. You don't speak just to fill the silence. You don't chase closure from people who never respected your presence to begin with. You become still, not stagnant, but deeply grounded. You don't react to the storm anymore. You become the eye of it. That kind of stillness is rare. Not taught. It's remembered. Because deep down, you've always known. You've always known that real power was never about proving. It was about presence, about how you hold yourself, about how you protect your peace in a world that profits from your pain. You've always known that being unbothered isn't apathy. It's wisdom. The wisdom to know that not every energy deserves a response, that not every invitation to conflict needs to be accepted. And with that wisdom, life starts to soften. You stop rushing your healing. You stop measuring your worth by your productivity. You let go of urgency. You stop living in reaction mode and start creating from a place of deep inner awareness. You start asking better questions. Instead of how can I win this argument, you ask, what am I protecting? Instead of why did they hurt me, you ask, what is this here to teach me? You move from victim to observer, from defense to discernment, and that is where you find your deepest freedom. Chapter 6. You can talk about peace. You can write about peace. You can promise yourself you'll choose peace next time. And until peace lives in your body, in your breath, in your timing. In the split-second space before you react, it remains an idea, not a practice. This is where the work becomes real. It's not in philosophy, but in physiology. Not in grand declarations, but in tiny pauses. Not in the story you tell others about how calm you are, but in the moment someone hits that nerve and you feel the heat rise, and you breathe instead of break. Most people try to control their reactions at the surface. Stay calm. But the body remembers. Old arguments live in muscle tension. Childhood shame sits in the chest. Unanswered accusations echo in the jaw. That's why sometimes your mouth says, I'm fine. But your shoulders are already at your ears, your heart is pounding, and your hands are clenched. Peace that ignores the body is performance. Peace that includes the body becomes power. So you begin at the most ordinary level, noticing. Noticing when your breath gets shallow. Noticing when you lean forward in defense. Noticing when your thoughts start racing toward the future, what you'll say, what they'll say, how you'll win, how you'll prove. Notice and then pause. One breath. In through the nose. Out slowly through the mouth. Lengthen the exhale. Tell your nervous system, we are safe. We don't need to attack. We don't need to run. We can stay. That one breath is not weakness. It's a reclaiming. It's you stepping back into the driver's seat of your response. Because in that small window, you remember, I have a choice. I can react from hurt or respond from clarity. I can repeat the past or create something new. I can feed the fire or I can cool it. That freedom lives in milliseconds. And with practice, those milliseconds stretch. Time slows. Awareness grows. Your reactions turn into responses. Your triggers turn into teachers. You start building rituals that support this inner steadiness. Not dramatic ones, consistent ones. 5 minutes of stillness before you check your phone. A daily scan of your body to notice where you are holding tension that isn't yours. Evening journaling where you name the moments that almost pulled you out of peace and what you chose instead. These practices look small, but they stack. They build emotional muscle. They prepare you for the harder conversations, the louder rooms, the deeper wounds. And yes, there will be days you don't get it right. Days you snap. Days you react from old pain so fast, you only recognize it after the words are out. Those days matter too. They're part of the training. Instead of shaming yourself, you review with compassion. What did I feel before I reacted? What went unspoken? What boundary wasn't honored? Where in my body did I first feel the shift? Learn from it. Every misstep is feedback. Every reaction is a map showing you where you're still carrying unprocessed weight. You begin to see patterns, the people, topics, or environments that trigger urgency in you. Maybe it's criticism from authority. Maybe it's being ignored. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's family. Once you see the pattern, you can prepare. You ground before the meeting. You script calm language before the call. You decide in advance how long you'll stay in a conversation that turns aggressive. Preparation is not fear. It is self-protection. It is honoring your nervous system the way you would protect a child from a storm. Energy budgeting becomes part of your peace. Just like money, your emotional energy is limited. Spend it with intention. Who restores you? Who drains you? Environments leave a residue that takes hours to clear. You don't need to cut everyone out. You just manage access. Shorter calls, longer recovery, more silence after noise. You stop apologizing for needing space. Space is where you reset. Space is where peace redash roots. As you become more practiced at pausing, something beautiful happens. You begin to hear the difference between instinct and impulse. Impulse shouts, say it now, prove them wrong, defend yourself. Instinct whispers, this doesn't need your energy. Walk away. Stay quiet. Speak later when calm returns. The more you honor that whisper, the stronger it grows. It becomes guidance, subtle but steady, pulling you toward choices aligned with who you are becoming. Not who you were when you were still reacting to survive. You also learn that silence is not always the answer. Sometimes peace requires a boundary spoken clearly. Sometimes it requires naming the harm. Sometimes it requires leaving what refuses to change. The difference is that now your words are not flung like weapons. They are placed like anchors. You speak from groundedness, not from emotional overflow. You can say, "I'm not available." For conversations that become insulting, and mean it, you can say, "I need time before I respond," and take it. You can say nothing and still be heard, because your energy is clear. Relationships shift under this new clarity. Some deepen. The people who respect your pauses learn to meet you there. They slow down, they listen, they repair. Trust grows. Other relationships fall away. Those built on drama, urgency, and emotional extraction lose their grip when you stop feeding them. Let them go. Not every ending is a failure. Many endings are the first breath of freedom. And as you release what drains you, room appears for what nourishes you. Still mornings, honest friendships, quiet work that feeds your spirit, laughter that isn't performative, rest that doesn't feel guilty. Creativity returns because your nervous system is no longer in constant battle. Clarity returns because the mental noise has space to settle. You start making decisions that align with long-term peace instead of short-term comfort. This is where your life begins to reassemble itself around your center. Not perfectly, not all at once, but steadily. People notice that you aren't easily provoked, that you listen before responding, that you can sit in discomfort without trying to control the room. They may call you calm, they may call you strong, but what you really are is present, fully here, not pulled backward by memory or forward by fear. Just here, breathing, choosing, and in that choosing, you discover something you were never taught. Peace is not fragile, it is resilient. It can sit in grief. It can stand in injustice. It can remain steady while you speak truth, while you cry. While you set boundaries that shake old foundations, peace is not the absence of feeling. It is the container that can hold all feeling without spilling into destruction. So keep practicing. Keep pausing. Keep returning to the breath that reminds your body it is safe to choose differently. Keep noticing when your energy leaks and gently seal the places where you abandon yourself. Keep building a life where silence is not suppression, but sanctuary. Because every time you do, you strengthen the quiet power that has been yours all along, and one day, without realizing when it happened, you'll find yourself in a moment that once would have broken you, and you'll stay steady. You'll breathe. You'll choose. You'll walk away, or speak softly, or simply smile. You'll know the work held, the practice landed. The peace lives here now, not as an idea, but as who you are.